So thank you again for making the time to join us. And so just to begin with the sort of elephant in the room. So the BOT has often found itself at odds with the government over monetary policy. How would you characterize the current relationship between the government and the BOT? And what do you think are the main sort of points of contention between the two?
Well, it is customary, in fact, for Minister of Finances and central bank governors to have, disagreements over certain issues, certain periods, and it'll be up to each pair, of finance minister and central bank governor to work out a workable method between the two. Because both wear different hats. The Minister of Finance tends to emphasize growth because he's worried about the next election. But on the other hand, the central bank governor would balance growth with sustainability. His worry will have many facets, addressing all the issues. So, the tendency for conflicts is always present. But in the case of the Prime Minister Seta, when he was also Minister of Finance, I think there was also a problem about the approach. He, instead of discussing quietly with the central bank governor, he exerted pressure instead through the press, and often appealing to the public, trying to present the fact that the central bank governor does not give enough attention, to the plight of the general people, of the poor. So that, I think, also created additional strain between the two unnecessarily. Anyhow, the post of Minister of Finance has now been changed. The new minister was formerly a board member of the Bank of Thailand, so I think he certainly understands the culture of the people at the Bank of Thailand, and they have had one meeting so far. And it appeared that he refrained from trying to pressure through the press about monetary policy. So I think the opportunity for a better relationship going forward is now present.
Okay. So how do you see this progressing, and how should the central bank respond to the government pressure? Should they cut rates? And one question we've been hearing is it also ego that may be stopping the Bank of Thailand from cutting rates at this point, especially with the economy not in the strongest position right now?
Well, I try to put myself, in the shoes of the central bank governor, and I will obviously be a little bit worried about the policy of excessive government spending, especially the measures announced by the government in giving money in a widespread manner, universal giveaway in order to finance consumption. As an economist, I will argue that the resources, the scarce resources of the country could be better employed elsewhere. The position of the governor is fairly strong because Thailand has had a tradition, of giving weight and protection to the Bank of Thailand, but at the same time we had amended the law, to make it difficult for for any government to remove the central bank governor unless there is a real apparent necessary cause. So on the whole, the Bank of Thailand can continue with its independence and with its view. And in a way, I think we must, or the government or the new minister must try to find a way to convince the central bank governor and the central bank as a whole that there is a need for a more relaxed monetary policy.
Okay. And so when do you see that shift happening? And there's an upcoming meeting review on June 12th. What do you think are the key factors that the BOT will be considering and should consider when deciding whether or not, like you said, to relax rates?
If the new minister slows down, or put perhaps less emphasis on the policy of giving away money for consumption, I think that would be a very good first step, to lessen the worry of people in the Bank of Thailand. There is also a need, to point to the Monetary Policy Committee that right now the world economy is slowing, and with the presence of trade war looming large, and also a potential risk to the issue of oil price going up, because of the conflicts in the Middle East. There is a strong need, for Thailand to speed up on private business investment in order to create more jobs, and also to point out to the Bank of Thailand that lower interest rate would be conducive to the solution of household debt, which is now at a very high level, and also it will provide more liquidity to the money market, and would help solve the problem that we have seen at least one large corporation that exhibited cash flow hiccups because it couldn't pay interest rate on the corporate bonds in time. So on the whole, I think discussions, persuasion, and the art of presentation will be needed by the new finance minister in order to convince the Bank of Thailand. But the basic environment, business environment in Thailand, in fact, in my opinion, points to a more relaxed monetary policy.
Understood. Okay, and your views on inflation, Mr. Thilachay? We had the NESDC forecasting lower headline inflation for 2024. Is there room even further than to lower interest rates? What's your expectation on the timeline? And overall, what are your views on the current inflation trends in Thailand right now?
Well, if you look at the inflation in Thailand, the latest figure, the headline inflation in April, is only 0.19% year on year, and that's below the floor of 1%. In fact, the headline inflation in Thailand had been negative for 6 months, before turning positive in the last month. It shows that the economy is weaker than anticipated. And if you look, at the timing that the Bank of Thailand increased, started the increase of interest rate, which they did in July 2022. They started from the low rate of 0.5 and started moving up in steps. They did that, when, of course, when the headline number in Thailand was quite high, 7.6%. But if you look back, you will find that not only was it high because of the constraints in supply resulting from the crisis during the COVID period, but also it went higher than that only for one more month after the Bank of Thailand started the interest rate increase. In fact, the headline inflation in Thailand peaked in August 2022 at 7.8%. And after that, it started dropping So if I have to comment, on the maneuvering by the Bank of Thailand, I think they started lifting interest rate a little bit behind the curve, and perhaps the slope of the increase was, in my opinion, a little bit too steep. And it went to the level of 2.5, which in my opinion was also perhaps too high. So this is the background, looking back. But for the Bank of Thailand to decide what to do in the future, this is, of course, the water under the bridge, and the whole economy and the various problems that are facing Thailand right now should be something that the Bank of Thailand pay particular attention to, the state of the economy.
Right, and that was going to be my next question as well. So your views on the state of the economy, also because from the print yesterday, NESDC trimmed the growth forecast for 2024 to between 2% to 3%, from 2.2% to 3.2%. So a slight downgrade, but they cited a lot of what you said: the external risks, trade protectionism, geopolitical conflicts, volatility. So how are you making sense of the Thai economy right now, and also the slight downgrade that we saw?
Well, in my opinion, the rate of growth of the Thai economy is below potential. I put the potential rate at 3%, and the consensus right now is that growth this year would be around 2.6 to 2.7, and the latest quarterly figure that came in year on year also showed not only a fairly low figure of 1.5, but it is also lower than the last quarter of 1.7. So obviously the economy is not recovering very well from COVID. The boom in tourism that we used to rely on Chinese tourists had come to some extent, but not as much as we had hoped. The Chinese authority, I think, put emphasis on the Chinese people traveling, holidaying more at home than going abroad, and also the slowdown in Europe and in Japan has not helped very much with our recovery. Not only that, if we go into the smaller details, we will see that the recovery, for the general public, for the workers, has been K-shaped. And I think perhaps this is common in a lot of the countries that recover from COVID, in that people who are better educated, people who have higher skill, have now recovered their earnings, perhaps to even a high level than before the crisis of COVID. But those unskilled, particularly those who work in the sector that had not recovered as well, are doing poorly. In fact, a large percentage of the Thai workers now earn less than what they did before the COVID. And if we look at the indebtedness of the households, we would find that people at the lower level of income, when we deduct their daily expenses, there is not enough left to pay back the debt. So the problem of household debt is going to become a big problem, affecting the banks, and a big problem dragging on the economy.
Right. But at the same time, we did also see some slightly better than expected GDP figures for Q1. There was growth of 1.5% in Q1, as you said, and the expectation was for 0.8%. So how do you see this progressing? Do you think that the recovery could see some more positive tailwinds over the next couple of quarters, or how do you see the recovery playing out over the next year or so in the short to medium term?
Uh, if we look ahead, the future doesn't have any bright spot on the sky. In fact, in many places, it looks like a lot of clouds building up. So in this sense, unless there is something major, unless there is a way to move Thailand forward differently than before, I fear that the momentum for growth will be just slow. The only thing that's holding up has been personal consumption. But on the whole, private investment has not been strong, and right now we are seeing the problem also extending into the export sector.
Understood. Could you speak more about China, Mr. Tireta? You did mention the trade war and tourism. So where does China factor into all of this, especially given that there's a mixed recovery there as well? How do you see that playing out for Thailand's economy?
Well, China is going to be a very important plank or should be a very important plank in our economic planning over the next decade or even 2 decades, because our proximity to China, and we can see that China is going to have to rethink the way it trades because of the trade war with the United States and perhaps even with Europe. So regional trade will have to be a main agenda between ASEAN, Thailand, and China. And in a way, Thailand has to prepare ourselves for that. And the second thing is the flow of manufacturing investment that need to get out of China in order to avoid tariffs with the American. I think that will flow into the ASEAN countries. We had seen a very strong flow into Vietnam because of its closeness to China. And Vietnam has a very, very strong rail link between the north of Vietnam and China. So the manufacturing businesses in China could relocate the main factories to Vietnam first, but allow the suppliers to still remain in China and feed the supplies, feed the parts from China into Vietnam bit by bit until the volume of production reaches the level that requires the production, the producer of the supplies of the parts to also set up factories in Vietnam. So the linkage by rail between Vietnam and China has been very advantageous for Vietnam. Unfortunately, Thailand had been very slow in trying to build a rail linkage with China. The construction is now going on, but it should have been completed quite some time ago. So China is going to be a key ingredient in the way that we plan, because China not only is our largest market, but also it can be Thailand, because of our position between China and India, and because we have a lot of capable businessmen, both of the Chinese and the Indian origins in Thailand, can become the go-between, the middleman, linking the trade between China and India quite conveniently. And I think that will be our strong point going into the future.
Understood. Okay, great points. And so recently we had Mr. Pichai, the current finance minister, saying that the lack of access to finance is an even bigger and more concerning issue than interest rates. So is that something you agree with or disagree with? And could you elaborate your views on that?
Well, I think both. Both need to be rethought. Interest rate, I think it is time to be rethought. But also the problem of access to finance, I think, in my opinion, is a strong criticism against the Bank of Thailand, because I think they had been a little bit too protective, of the banks. And I would recommend the finance minister to ask the Bank of Thailand to set an agenda, to invite more competition into the banking system. In fact, when I was minister, I suggested to the Bank of Thailand then that we should invite the top 3 banks, from ASEAN countries, as well as from India, China, +3, meaning Japan, Korea, and even Australia, to come and open up shop in Thailand without asking for reciprocal privilege. Unfortunately, that hadn't turned out to be effective. There is also a need, to work out the weak non-performing loans, both in the household sector and also in the SME sectors. I had also, came up with the idea that I think it is time for the government to temporarily offer higher level of guarantee to new projects, by the SMEs that request loans from the banks, even as high as 70 or 80%, as long as the commercial banks consider the project to be viable and are prepared to bear the 20-30% risk themselves. Then also there is a need for Thailand to think about something I call it the startup venture capital fund in order to push, in order to spur the private sector in setting up innovation projects, and whereby the government can perhaps go in and hold shares in the percentage of minority for the beginning period. So all this, I think, will need to be done in order to make sure that the private sector has adequate access to financing.
Okay, and any other measures you think could be taken to improve access to finance for both businesses as well as individuals, and how you see the role of sort of fintech and digital banking in addressing these issues? Any other points in addition to what you've mentioned?
Well, I think it is time for the Bank of Thailand and together with the government to ask ourselves, how can we go forward? How can we revamp our competitive advantage? Previously, we relied on low wages, the concept of supply chain foreign direct investment, whereby multinational companies invest in ASEAN countries, and each producing certain parts and perhaps adding more value, moving the part from one country to another, and then for the final assembly somewhere, perhaps in China. All this is going to change. So I think, we need to ask ourselves what should be our best competitive advantages going forward. and that is not going to be easy. If we look at export, I think it shows the problems. For the past 3.5 years after COVID, we could see that the level of export, even though it fluctuates, but has been around 24, 25 billion US dollar monthly. No growth for 3.5 years. So it shows that a problem exists. A need is very urgent to find our new ways towards competitive advantages.
Got it. Understood. And our final question before I throw it open to anything else you might have to add, Mr. Thirachai, but what is your outlook on the Thai baht in the short and long term and how it's impacting Thai exports performance and the overall health of the economy? Any views on the currency?
I think the currency should be, moved out of the picture at this stage. Because we have low foreign currency debt. So in my opinion, I think the worry about Thai baht being weak, if the central bank lower interest rate or increase liquidity into the system, that worry should not be played up. More important is how we can recover or redirect our competitiveness. I think the main concern for the Bank of Thailand and the Finance Ministry going forward should be how to position the ability of the private sector in Thailand towards more competitiveness. Change the competitive advantages that we used to have and we had lost, and find new ways. And in order to do that, it may mean, I think I recommend for a looser monetary policy, lower interest rate, higher liquidity, and making it conducive for businesses to make new plans, adapt themselves to the new way of doing business. And if doing that means lower Thai baht, I will say so be it. I think we should not be too worried about the baht being weak, because if we look at the level of debt that we have, both the government and the private sector, the level of debt denominated in foreign currency is very low. So the fluctuation in Thai baht, I think, should be less of a worry to stability of the system. But we need to pay more attention to the direction of our future.
Understood. Okay, and final question before we wrap up. Any more thoughts on the BOT's independence? You said there was scope for improvement. So how exactly is that going to happen? If you could break it down a bit and give us your detailed inputs just as we wrap up.
Independence, I think, for the central bank in Thailand is adequate. And I see no reason to try to erode that, to try to lessen that. But there is a need for the finance minister to talk to the central bank in the same language, and to find a better way to communicate, a better way to convince people at the central bank of the need to go forward. But as I say, in order to do that, the finance ministry should first show, or give confidence to the central bank that they can control the urge for unnecessary fiscal spendings.
Understood, Mr. Thirachai. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today. It was fantastic chatting with you. Is there anything else that we missed in our questions that you'd like to chat about in final notes?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you again for making the time to chat with us today.
Okay.
Divya, Chayut, any other questions that I missed?
Thank you, Mr. Tirachai. No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good day.
Okay. Thank you.